Welcome back, students. For this video, we're going to turn to the Kingdom of France and to Philip Augustus, who you remember is the great rival of Richard the Lionheart. As a child, Philip was lost in the woods, and this was a huge threat to the Capetians. Remember, the Capetian dynasty is very weak at this time, and basically all that's keeping them going is the fact they keep producing one single heir and not dividing their inheritance, and so they become to be accepted as the royal family of France, even without exercising a lot of power. And so to lose the oldest son and heir in the woods, and this is not just kind of the woods that you go hang out in your neighborhood. These were large, terrifying woods. It was easy to get lost in them. There were all kinds of frightening animals, bears and wolves in European woods at this time. It would have been a very traumatic experience. And so Philip is found. He's found after when the search parties have almost given up. And he's brought back, but he's so sickly and he seems to be dying. And his father makes a pilgrimage. Where does he go on pilgrimage? He goes to the pilgrimage of the shrine of Thomas Becket, and the great opponent of Henry II, the great opponent of the Angevin Empire of England and southwestern France, the great rivals, the Capetians. And Philip recovers. He recovers to survive, but he is going to be sickly for the rest of his life. His main goal is going to be to defeat the Angevins, who are the great threat to the Kingdom of France at this time. So he returns early from the Third Crusade to take advantage of Richard the Lionheart being away and to attack his lands. After Richard's death, Philip defeated his successor, Richard's successor, John, at the Battle of Boudin in 1214. The Battle of Boudin is one of the most important battles in the history of the Middle Ages. It's a battle that transforms the fortunes of the Capetian rulers. Whereas previously, as I've said, they're really just hanging on. They're acknowledged as the royal family, but they have very little power. After the Battle of Boudin, they gain control of new lands in France, and their revenues doubled. This is really important because it enables them to keep a permanent military army, a permanent army in the field. And for the first time, they are stronger than some of their vassals. And so they're no longer just figureheads, but they're able to control some of their theoretical subordinates. Philip is going to spend the rest of his long reign, in the next 8-9 years, establishing a powerful, centralized bureaucracy of nobles that were loyal to him. Philip's son, Louis VIII, continues to increase French royal power by finishing the Albigensian Crusade. Remember, I said that the Albigensian Crusade had been ended by the papacy because they could see they weren't strong enough to fully drive out the ruling family of this region of southern France. However, the power of the Capetian monarchy, the power of the Kingdom of France after the Battle of Boudin means that Louis VIII is able to do this. He's able to secure control of southern France. I'm going to show this to you on the map. This region of Toulouse, on this map it's pronounced Tolosa. That's in dark orange here. These are territories that are being added to the Kingdom of France at this time. So Louis expands the French kingdom to the south after Philip Augustus, his father, has expanded it to the north. Louis VIII was succeeded by his son Louis IX, who is considered the model medieval king by many of his contemporaries. People in medieval Europe at the time, this was considered, Louis after his death was considered to be a model of how someone should rule a medieval kingdom. Louis IX died, Louis IX's father that is, had died when he was quite young. He was only 12 years old and he was raised by his mother. She assigned him teachers in Latin, rhetoric, military sciences, and government. So you can see how his formation is influenced by the medieval university system that we talked about last time. Louis is renowned for caring for his kingdom. That's one of the hallmarks that makes him seen as a model monarch of the Middle Ages. He introduces the practice of trial by jury. He cares for the poor. Every day we're told he fed hundreds of beggars with his own hands. He cared for lepers the social outcasts of the kingdom. He founded new hospitals. He created shelters for prostitutes who were seeking to leave this life, who were seeking protection, who were seeking shelter while they changed their lives. So this is Louis's care for his kingdom. He was also someone who was committed to the Crusades. He reformed his government, develop the foundations of a centralized state, an efficient centralized state that is going to help France establish itself as the leading kingdom in Europe. Remember, up until this point, it's been overshadowed by the Germanic Empire, even by the English or by the Angevin Empire. And Louis's reforms of government make the French government more efficient, more centralized, prepares France to be one of the most influential kingdoms, one of the most influential nations in Europe. But he does this so that his mother and his lieutenants can continue to manage the kingdom and he can leave on crusade. And so in 1249, he led a crusade that followed the path of the Fifth Crusade and landed in Egypt. He captured the city of Damietta very quickly because the city had been captured after a long siege on the Fifth Crusade. Many people had died of hunger. The citizens don't want to experience that again. Egypt is increasingly seen as the key to conquering the Holy Land. If you can conquer Egypt, if you can control Egypt, you will have a solid base, a solid foundation from which to expand to Jerusalem. Whereas if you go straight for Jerusalem, the received knowledge at this point is that your army will be cut off, you won't have a solid supply line. And so Louis captures the port city of Damietta on the coast of Egypt. Then he advances inland, but he ends up getting confused by the flooding of the Nile River. He ends up getting stranded, having to surrender to the opposing Muslim forces. He went on crusade again in 1270. This time, as you can see from the map at the bottom here, he goes on crusade to Tunisia. Still, no one is quite sure why he did this. It seems as though there was a rumor that the Muslim ruler of Tunis was ready to make an alliance with the Crusaders if he just had some Christian support. And the idea is that then he and Louis would lead armies across Europe to take on Egypt. When the Crusaders arrive there, the ruler of Tunisia isn't ready to convert to Christianity, and the army is ravaged by disease while besieging the siege of Tunis. And Louis himself dies on this crusade. He is considered the model medieval king by his contemporaries because he had supported the Crusades, he had gone on the crusade, and although his crusades, maybe you could say in military terms, had been less successful than Frederick II, that in the end is not the fundamental goal. They were seen as more appropriate spiritual exercises. He had cared for his subjects, he had respected the leadership of the papacy, and he had brought peace and stability to his kingdom. So in looking at Louis IX, we can see some of the hallmarks of a medieval king that were most respected and most valued by medieval society.